Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kansas City Legends Season 2. We have a beautiful human, one of my favorite people in the world. Dean is here with us. How are you, Dean?
I'm doing very well. A little chilled right now, but
Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting the snow, but I mean, I was, but I wasn't expecting it to be all day.
well, I'm an old farm boy. I can make it through it.
That's that makes one of us. I don't like it. I hate it. I hate everything about it. Um, so I wanted to have you on. I've been super excited. We've been talking about having you on the show essentially since the beginning. Um, and
Correct.
it's been like, hey, I want to get you on. I want to get you on. I want to talk
Are
to
you
you.
sure you want to get me on?
Oh, here we go.
You keep trying to book it. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, like it just things kept getting in the way and kept having to push things back.
Oh, life.
Life kept happening, but finally, you're finally here, and I'm super, super excited to talk to you. Um, I want to go back first with how long have you been in Kansas City?
I'm born and raised here.
Okay.
I did leave during my high school years for 4 years, and then we came back.
So you are a Kansas City native.
Yes, I'm born and raised in St. Luke's, right down there on the plaza.
Okay. So, and when did you come out?
I first, it was kind of a long process of coming out as gay. As far as in Kansas City, it was about in '81 when I had just moved back. I had done 1 year college. It didn't work, so I moved back to Kansas City, and I started going to the gay bars when I was a little underage.
Just a scotch underage.
Yes, 19.
So you have been out in the community since 1981.
81.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what was gay life like when you first came out?
Uh, Gay community was the bars. There were 18 bars. The other place a lot of people would hang out, we called it the mall. It was Liberty Memorial. And they were very segregated. Male, female, race, and what you were into. Like, we had some bars that were more geared towards mature gentlemen. There were a couple other bars which were more geared towards the new age punk scene. Then there was the country bar.
So it's definitely different now where we have like two bars, three.
Correct, because we even had some extremely large bars. Like right now, Missy B's is probably one of the larger bars. It would two of those would fit into some of those other bars.
Oh wow.
The Cabaret was a huge bar.
Yeah, I've heard some stories about the cabaret. And it's to me, I think the most interesting is that was right in the middle of kind of the AIDS crisis.
It the pre. It really wasn't kicking in. Nobody was really talking about that yet.
So you actually went through the whole.
Yes,
thing.
I remember how much fun and everybody. It was just sex everywhere, and then all of a sudden it was like you got to the point where you were so scared to even touch people.
That's got to be, to me, I just look at that and go, because I was born in 1981, so I have always had there's always been that kind of, as a gay male, it's always been that kind of specter of AIDS and HIV and what it could,
and we didn't know what it was, and then it got to during the high point. It got to the point where whenever you went to the bar, it wasn't a matter if someone died; it was who had died that week. And if you didn't go out, and then you'd show up, everybody would have assumed you had passed away, and which was also freaky too.
I can only imagine. Like, I guess I keep thinking about that in terms of like for someone to have gone through and made it out of it. You know what I mean? And a lot of people didn't.
Especially like out of my clique, everybody had their group of friends. I assumed that since I was the most sociable person, that I would be one of the first to go. And it never happened. But I was watching these close friends of mine that came out together one by one go.
And it's like there's got to be there's trauma involved in that. And I think that is, for me, I don't know, like, I always say that's, that is like, because you said the gay culture was the bars. And even when I was coming up, some 20 years later and started going out, gay culture was the bars. It was what bar you went to, who you went out with. That's where you made these really amazing, great friendships that, you may not see them during the week, but you knew Friday night, Saturday night, you were going to see them. And, you bonded and all of that stuff.
Or at the bathhouses or other things.
And so let's talk about bathhouse, because that's an aspect of gay culture that I think is something that, like, we don't see anymore. You don't see bathhouses. I mean, they probably still exist in some way.
Yes, in the bigger cities, yes.
But, like, that's not something that a lot of gay men these days kind of know anything about. And that was, during that time, that was a large part of the community.
Oh, yeah. Because, or the bookstores, adult bookstores. It was just some place where you have your lunch break, you go there and participate in the activities at either one.
There's an activity there for you to do.
When I first came out, the bathhouse was 18 years old. So you could be younger, and that was the only place you had to go. But we'd go to the bars. They'd close at 1:30. Then we'd go to the bathhouse, and then about 6 o'clock we would leave and go to work.
Oof.
And then we'd go to work. Then we'd go take the afternoon nap, and then we'd start back all over again that night.
So, see, and I had a similar, not quite nearly as fun, obviously, as you would have had, but, where we would go out we'd go to the bar, and I had a weekly schedule. Monday you were this place, Tuesday you were this place, Wednesday you were this place, and we would go out, stay out till 2 o'clock in the morning, go home, maybe take a little bit of a disco nap, go to work, and then that process would start over again the next day. So tell me what...
And it was during those early days when I first was introduced to leather, or I got my first dose of passion for leather. There was another close friend of mine that we just ran into each other at the bar a lot, and it was a fall morning, and he arrived, and it had been a misty night, and so he was wearing a leather coat. And when he came to the bar, he gave me this big bear hug, and my face was buried into that damp leather, and that scent of that damp leather just aroused something in me.
It aroused something.
Yes, big time. Because, anyway, so he figured it out, so he gave me a leather strap, so I would wear that leather strap around my neck for almost a year.
Okay, and that was...
And I still have it, because it was from Chuck.
So, let's talk about... Because I've heard you say things... tell stories about kind of the community and things that were happening, at that point. When did you become get into the community, or like really be a part of the community, and when did you join the Pioneers?
Okay, then the A crisis kind of came in, and everybody kind of got into relationships, and I knew there was the leather bar, the Windjammer. I couldn't get in. I was too young. There was no way anybody underage was going to get my Carolyn. That was just not going to happen. But when I finally got in there, I was introduced for my first long-term partner. He was friends with all these leather people. And that was the first time it was like the Tom of Finland. They'd stand around and look so hot and so scary at that time. Until one time he invited me to a Christmas and July party, and this was probably like in 85, 86, and all my fantasy Leathermen were here.
All of these Tom of Finland.
Yes, but they were in their tennis shorts and Izod shirts and sharing recipes and talking theater, and the whole illusion of the leather community. I was just like, It's just costume. I have never been afraid of a leather person since.
That's so funny because we talk like it's now when you look at it, or when I look at it, because I'm coming into the leather community, there was this level of, and I will be honest with you, when I was younger, it was like either you turn a certain age and you become either a leather gay or an opera gay. You know what I mean? Like it's one of the two things, and I think part of the reason why I resisted kind of getting into the leather community was because I was like, I ain't old enough for that yet. Like, and even now, I have friends that are like, that are, when I say, oh yeah, I'm going to this leather function, they're like, oh, so you're a leather daddy now? And I'm like, no. I'm just.
Well, let me describe it this way. Way back when they were talking about you were gay or straight, and I was like, no, there's a full spectrum. And people can fall anywhere between totally gay and totally straight, and there's that big gray area. Well, it's the same thing within the community. Everybody has a little leather in them. Everybody has a little drag in them. Everybody has a little queen in them.
Right.
And it's just a matter of what brings it out at the time.
And I think that it's, it's almost a cycle of gay life. Like you come out, and you're like the twink, you're the fresh meat,
Yep.
And then then you're kind of established. You get established in, and I'd say that there's this period of like 10 years where like there are people who are new. There are these new people in, and so they're like the fresh meat now, and then you are just kind of like a part of the community. And then you hit a certain age, and that's why I say that you have the path in front of you, which path you're going to go. And so I think from what I'm hearing from you is that like you kind of came in and immediately was like, this is the thing.
I had the desire and the even some of my fetishes I was introduced to, but I never got into.
Okay.
Until once me and my partner, after 10 years, broke up, I had gone kind of isolated. A friend of mine, he said, you haven't been out for 6 months. I'm going to St. Louis. You're going with me. He literally kidnapped me, took me to Magnolia's. Gateway, which is a leather club there, was having their club night. And part of that night was a local leather contest the bar did. I had a couple of drinks. My friend said, come on, you can do it. He borrowed a pair of leather shorts from the leather shop and threw me on stage, and I won.
And that's all that was all it took.
Then I met the Gateway members. They started telling me about the Pioneers. So when I got home, I checked out the Pioneers, and that's in '94 I became a Pioneer.
So you've been a Pioneer member since 1994.
Yes.
That is so. That's amazing. How do you think the club has changed in the time that you've been? Because you've been there through the ups and downs.
I can get in trouble for making that.
I mean, this is a safe space.
I have always, my theory or the way I process things in any organization, including the Pioneers, is the club is what you make it. Yes, whenever you join a club, there are certain standards and traditions and things like that. But as new members come in, a club or organization has to evolve to what those new members want or need to survive. And sometimes it's kind of hard to break traditions.
Right.
But you have to.
I think you can.
And so I have to remind some people that the Pioneers, because like it's always evolving, a club always evolves. And when some people call out some of the changes going on now, and I was like, honey, remember when we were first members, we were the rebel risers. And some of the things that we got done, they thought would never change. So,
well, and I think that it's right now, especially kind of with this new current crop of brothers, myself included, it's kind of the younger guard. We're younger.
I know when one of the newer members referred to me as old guard, I was like,
who the hell?
Who, me?
I ain't old, bitch. You know what I'm saying? But like, it's, as it evolves and people evolve and as a community we kind of grow, and so the needs have changed.
Yes.
And I remember early on in my pledge process, someone stopped coming to me and being like, this isn't a sex club. And I was like, that's the reason I'm here. Like,
yeah.
If it were a sex club, I would not be here.
Sex is important to a lot of the members, but it's not a sex club.
Right.
Even though some people have tried to make it that way.
There's nothing wrong. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. If that is what you want your organization to be, by all means, do that. But I think that if, to me, what the Pioneers means is, like, it's about the community. It's about community,
yes.
Fostering relationships with other people, with other groups, bringing people in, and also building on the legacy of what was there before. So I think it's really important that, like, we have those traditions and that we honor those traditions while also moving forward. And there's a way to do both. And I really think it's having someone that's got the bona fides and the I've been here, I know I know what works and what doesn't work. That doesn't mean we can't try what doesn't work again, because it may be the circumstances have changed.
A lot of things that they will work for a while, but if you don't have the initial person or drive that person had, it won't continue.
Right. And
you have to be willing to let that go or revisit it later with someone else that has those same characteristics that started that.
Right.
Project.
And, I think that you guys, they were saying that, the membership was down to like 4 or 5 members.
For a long time.
And now it's starting to grow again. Mm-hmm. What do you think is attributing to that growth?
A lot of it is, the internet kind of made it hard to meet people, and people lost that one-on-one connection that they desired. Because when I came out, the art of cruising, it was more the thrill of, can you connect with this person, or is it like people go online and they just instantly want to meet? Well, the thrill is more of the flirting back and forth and the chase. And then a lot of times when you finally got there, you're like, well, I really don't want to do anything. I just wanted to see if I could get you.
I guess since I'm here,
Yeah.
But I think that it's because I was never good at cruising.
Well, what I found interesting was because there is a real talent to it. And one time, a younger person new to the community, he was only like 20 at the time, and I was talking about cruising, and he had no idea what I was talking about. So I laid it on him, and he literally freaked out because, it's the eye contact whenever you kind of look down at someone, and he was just like, what are you
doing? Yeah. I tell people all the time, I don't have the situational awareness in that aspect for cruising to work, because I would be like, I don't understand. You're just being friendly. Why are you looking at me this way? It's weird. I don't understand what's going on.
And that's the part you have to achieve is learning the skill of at what point are you going to make them understand that I am not just being friendly.
Right.
Let's go and get nasty.
See, and I never did that. Like, I remember one time I was living in Florida, and a friend of mine took me to this area of the beach that was a known cruise spot. And and they just got in the car, shut the car off, and I was like, where are we going? And he's like, we're here. And I'm like, what do you mean we're here? And I'm like, we're just sitting.
So have you ever cruised the bushes or the park because there are still places around, and there's a fabulous one in Oklahoma along the highway.
We'll get into that in the second half, because I'm sure that you got some stories. But I think that as a gay man and as someone in leather, and it's been in Kansas City for most of your life. What do you see as that the community needs? Like I would say, the first thing we need is a dedicated leather bar, but
That's always a nice, fabulous dream. I do not see enough people to support a bar. A bar takes
a lot.
a lot of people going in and out daily. Um, there's also a lot of people, in my opinion, have this fantasy as to what the leather scene or leather bar or the other things were like. Oh no, they were very fun, but there were certain rules that these people nowadays, you're not going to want to follow these rules. There is a reason you didn't just couldn't just call yourself master or daddy. You had to earn that. Someone had to give you that title.
So let's talk about that, because I've noticed, I've spent a lot of time in the straight side of the BDSM and kink world. Not as a straight person, just as someone who that's where I landed when I first found it. And now that I'm kind of experiencing the gay side, the terminology is somewhat different. What do you think that the biggest differences are as far as like an MS or a DS dynamic in the gay world? Because I know you use the term daddy a lot.
Yes. Okay. To me, a daddy and a boy relationship is more of a partnership, and to where, sure, you're daddy, but I'm in charge.
Got it.
Yeah. In a master slave, there is no question. The master is in charge, and the slave has committed to taking care of and doing whatever the master says, which is quite different.
Yeah.
And I was like, there is no way with my personality I would be in so much trouble all the time.
That was like, first of all, there's a myriad of reasons why an MS that dynamic isn't going to work for me. But
and what it works for me in my relationship as a daddy and a boy, because I have always been a caregiver. So I've always been very subservient to whoever I'm with at the time. Even though everybody's like, oh, well, you're just, I'm like, oh no, but I get my way.
Right.
I'm.
You listen. To me, there's an art to that, like, because you can't. There's a brat, which I am a brat. I will be the first person to admit it.
I can see that.
But I think there is an art to getting your way through submission. Getting your way through being like, this is the thing that this is the goal I'd like to achieve. How can I do that in the manner in which is still leaves me in the subservient position? And I think that we, as I think gay men or gays in general have are really good at kind of navigating those interpersonal relationships. Because we've had to, we've had to learn how to adapt to our situations and our surroundings. Even outside of like the kink world, we've had to learn how to be like, oh, okay, I can't say this, or I can't do this, or I can't do this, because if I say this or do this or do this, then someone might find out, and that could be detrimental. We've learned how to kind of navigate and I think that's also where like the daddies come in, or the tops, or
right. And whenever I was a title holder, we were gearing more towards mentorship instead of a daddy. I'm a daddy. No, I'm going to mentor people to help them on their path to discovering leather. One of the things is the AIDS cross took away so many elders in our community, and so much knowledge and so much experience, and that's why things had to change to where people had to be more self-exploring, because there wasn't people there to teach them the skills that used to be passed on throughout in the community. When people talk about the old leather bars and stuff, there's a reason they were very secretive. You entered through the alley. You had to know someone to get in. You had to be dressed appropriately, because the kinks were different people specialized in different ones. Nowadays everybody wants to try everything.
Right.
But back then it's like, no, he does fisting. No, he does flogging. He does, but he's a master of it. And they would pass those techniques and stuff down to the person that wants to discover that.
And that's kind of the hanky code. And
yes.
Find, and so talk a little bit about the hanky code, because it's, to me, that is one of the most fascinating things about, especially pre-AIDS, pre-HIV gay life, is this idea that, there was this code, this unspoken code that people just knew.
Yes.
It's like...
But it was a lot smaller code.
Yeah, no,
now there's some of us like, really?
There's a hanky for everything now. But I mean, it was, and it was word of mouth. And so, you could go...
It was something you were taught once you became part of the leather community. Mm-hmm. And once you got into that circle of going to the leather bar. And a lot of that, it wasn't that they were... It was more for their own protection, because it was highly illegal.
Right.
For what they were... Their fetishes are highly illegal. Yeah.
And but you could go to Chicago, you could go to New York, and you could go to San Francisco, and you could go to DC, and the codes were the same. You know what I mean? It was passed down, and this was pre-internet.
Yes.
This was that's
before
a production.
text, before computers.
Yeah. This was a production that but if you were in the community, you knew what those codes meant. And it's because someone taught you. And we lost that. We did. I think that we lost. And I've said this before on this show, or maybe something similar. But when we got apps, we lost something that made the queer community and the gay community great.
The other big thing I've noticed, and I was part of, is when I first got here, like I said, everything was very segregated. It was some bars, straight people couldn't get in. Men were not allowed in certain areas of the women. They had their bars, and as a man, I was not equal in there.
Right.
I couldn't even get served in there. And then whenever I started getting, first with Pride, and we started making it more of a festival, and we wanted more inclusion, and wanted to be accepted by the straights, well, there's a price for that. When we started getting more accepted, and we could start holding hands and dancing together at any bar, or going to restaurants and stuff like that, it took away our community.
Right.
But we kind of asked for it. So I have to remind people is, be careful what you ask for. You wanted to be included and accepted. Well, now that you are, you want to be separated again.
Right.
That's
it's I said we lost because I look at I'm a student of the Black queer experience, and so Paris is Burning was one of the first gay films I ever watched, and I was in love with this idea of the balls and the houses and all of that stuff, because there was that sense of family and that sense of community. And then hearing in leather, where you could if you were new in town, you found somebody in the leather scene, and you could essentially, they could set you up with your life in that town, get you a job, find you a place to live, find fresh off the boat. And that's not a good term to use, but
well, and we took care of our own. Especially if young ones were kicked out, we would take them under our wings and make sure that predators wouldn't take over.
Right.
Then if they were ready to relocate or something, we was like, well, I have this friend in San Francisco. Let me introduce you to them, and they will help you get set up.
Right, and I think we don't do that anymore because of that sense of community is gone. There are little pockets of communities, but
along that line is when AIDS was first getting started, we had no resources, but the community stepped up and took care of. I volunteered to take people to their doctor's appointments, and we created the food bank and all this stuff. And eventually, as they were grown and more accepted, a lot of those organizations that we started were absorbed into other, like Harkmark was absorbed into Harvesters. I remember when starting the KC Care, the Kansas City Free Health Clinic, which is now, it's like, oh, I remember when we were raising money to try and get that.
When you were getting those things started.
And trying to talk doctors and nurses into working in that free clinic and fighting to get the meds and stuff that people needed.
And to me, like, it's...
It was actually a old storefront in the middle of a neighborhood. That if you didn't know where that building was...
You didn't...
And it was not in the best condition.
But you it's that ability to adapt to your different situations and being in this, because essentially it was like you had to take care. That was survival. You know what I mean? Like, and yes, is it great that there's a level of acceptance and people feel like like people are coming out younger, more and more people are coming out, and great, all that stuff is wonderful, but the community aspect, I think, is the thing. Honestly, that for me, I feel like I missed out on is
there's still a very good community. It's just that it's a lot more spread out and more accepted to where it's not all gay.
Right. And it's that brings me to another question that I think a lot of people are kind of especially in Kansas City, are kind of grappling with is the gay kink community versus and leather community versus the straight kink and leather community. And has there and everyone's like, there's never been a time that they've been together.
No, they didn't mix. It's kind of like, well, mainly because at that time a lot of the straights were more afraid of what are these gay men going to try and do to our men. We don't have very many men taking care of all of our needs. Because at that time there were more women into like Oz than men. Yes. But there were a few pioneers, not like that could cross between the two. And the first time I was invited to an Oz play party, I was just like, but I found it quite thrilling, but it was more of I'll just stay over here.
I'll just stay here and watch.
Yes, this is fascinating because I'll be honest, these women are so much tougher than I am.
Listen, I have seen these women do some things that I'm like, okay, like, couldn't be me, but do you? But I think, and so what are your, because we're going to go into our part 2 in just a minute, which is going to be not for y'all. If you want to see part 2, then you will have to go to the Patreon and subscribe on the Patreon to see part 2 of this interview. But what do you think? What's your vision of what the Kansas City kink community could be, and what do you think the Pioneers' place is in that community?
That's a loaded question.
I know. That's why I asked it.
In my dream world, I see each group having their own identity, but a couple times a year, I would like to see like a big joint, like a leather weekend, where each of us can kind of cross cross the fence and experience each other's way of doing things, each other's family.
So it's an interconnected community.
Yes. Way do I see the Pioneers? I have always, I know
through the years, people have attacked the pioneers for so many reasons of being stuck up or in control, and I was like, no, we're not. The pioneers to me have always been very supportive. I have never seen the pioneers go against any group or organization, and they're like, if that's what you want to do, you go for it. We'll support you as much as we can. And there's a lot of history in Kansas that people are not even aware that the pioneers were involved with.
That makes sense. You know, because from what I've noticed, some of the pioneers is it tends to be behind the scenes.
Yes. Because it's like, we don't want to be in charge. This is your thing. We just want to support you and wish you the best of luck.
Right.
Now, if you're doing something illegal, or we're not going to stand behind you.
Ooh, this popcorn ceiling is wonderful. No, it's, you know, and I think that there is, you know, that's, to me, that vision of what of the community is the same thing that I have. You know, it's this.
The biggest challenge in any organization and group or community is, don't take too personal or too much of what one person's doing, because there will always be the one person that's always going to create drama. There's no way you're ever going to make them happy. They're always going to attack you, and the only way to really deal with them is ignore them. Don't react to everything they say and post. Social media can be such a rabbit hole. Stay out of the rabbit hole.
It is, you know, as a child of social media, it's hard sometimes, and I get it. I know that I shouldn't be reacting, but it's hard.
Daddy Aaron reminds me, don't go down that rabbit hole. If I start going down one, he'll remind me to stop. Just don't. You just let them say whatever they want and don't react.
I really like,
because all they want to do is get your reaction, and before you know it, you become the bad guy.
Yep. Every time. I really like Aaron. He's so smart. He's so smart. Shout out to you, Aaron. I'm sure you'll see this. Thank you for this half of the interview. I'm super excited to get into the dirty stuff with the next one. Guys, this was Dean. Thank you once again. Thank you so much for being here. And again, check us out on the Patreon for our second part of this interview. Thanks and have a great day. I don't know why I said have a great day.